This is going to be a more theoretical session on iiRDS, about the format, about what changed in the consortium. This is not a use case. Anybody who expects that, wants to see fancy windows, we are okay if you leave. Yeah? Okay, so we want to take a look at iiRDS and what happened in the last year. Who is familiar with iiRDS? Who knows what we are talking about? Okay, so I will keep the introduction short. Thank you. About us, this is where we come from. We are from a company named Parson, and we are service providers for technical communication, and we are also consultants for XML, metadata, models, and data training, everything you need around technical communication. My name is Parson. I founded the company, and my colleague will introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, and welcome. My name is Schubert. I'm a technical consultant. I work obviously for Parson. And what's probably more interesting for you is that I'm also involved in developing the standards. So I'm a member of the working group development. We will hear a bit about that later. And you didn't say that, you didn't mention that?
No, I didn't say that. I was the chair of the steering committee of iiRDS last year and was re-elected into the steering committee yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, fortunately. Okay, we did that as a timeline, so that is our basic assumption, that we are following a timeline. That's why we are jumping sometimes from topic to topic, because we are following the time and not the topic. So just that's the general baseline. Last year, when we were here in 2017, we showed the release candidate for iiRDS, which was version 0.9, and presented that for the very first time and started a request for comments. And we wanted to, iiRDS is meant as a content delivery standard for exchanging smart information across suppliers, across systems. So for instance, that you can exchange smart information from a content management system to a content delivery platform. But it's not only that, it provides a standardized metadata model. So if you are thinking of going from unstructured to structured information, you can also use iiRDS as your metadata model, because there's a lot of knowledge in there. There are a lot of knowledgeable people involved in developing the standard. And if you're thinking of using metadata for filtering, for variant management, for reuse, then that is also a good start. One of the use cases that guided us is, that is why we added this here, is retrieving maintenance information for a specific component within a machine. Say that you have a scheduled maintenance, and this component, what's that called, the service unit, wants to be maintained at regular intervals. So what the component or the system, the user system needs to do is to retrieve information about the maintenance of that component. So we have more of these use cases, and then when we developed iiRDS, we started with use cases. We did not start with a bunch of standards or a theoretical background. We started with the use cases, with the requirements.
Okay. Anybody completely new to iiRDS? Okay. So I'd like to talk a bit about what was there last year. So that's about the release candidate. You will see that a lot of that is also still in the standard. So the core hasn't changed. So iiRDS is providing a package format, and it is providing a metadata vocabulary for the exchange of technical documentation. That is all with that content delivery use case and scenario in mind. I would like to show you a bit about the format and about the metadata. So that's the version 0.9, so to speak. The iiRDS package format comes in two flavors. It is a zip format currently with a particular folder structure, and these two flavors that you can see on the left-hand side. The first one is an unrestricted format that allows you to use any content format that you would like to use. And the other one, iiRDS/A, that's the restricted format. It's intended for archiving, and it's restricting the content formats that you can use. For example, with iiRDS, you're allowed to use a subset only of HTML5 in your content if you want to use that. So the idea is to have a format that's a bit more predictable and stable if you want to process that, while the other one allows you to be as free as possible when you want to deliver content.
So one question, any formats could be some proprietary Office format, file format?
It can be Word, it can be PDF, it can be anything, yes.
Yeah, the content may be in any format, the metadata may not be in any format.
And that's what's on that zip icon here. There's a meta-in folder, and in that folder there's the metadata.rdf file. And that's where the metadata is in for the package. And the file ending is a hint already about the language that is used to model the metadata. And that's RDF, which is short for Resource Description Framework. It's W3C standard. Most of you have probably heard about that. And the metadata format, the ontology of iiRDS is using that RDF and RDFS. So that's a bit hard to read probably.
Yeah, you go in anyway.
Yeah,
so
I will zoom in further. So this is the ontology, the metadata vocabulary. It looks a lot like a hierarchy, like a taxonomy. That's because it is one. And the centerpiece here is the information unit. The information unit is a set of metadata, a bundle of metadata that is then assigned to content in the package, to files in the package in the end. The information unit has subclasses, as you can see here, package, document, topic type, and fragment. And these subclasses, instances of these subclasses, assign then a set of metadata to the content. So what kind of metadata is there? That's what I'm going to show you next. The first one, there's there used to be three main classes for metadata. The first one is the information type, which is providing a vocabulary to describe the nature of the information unit. So a document could have a document type, for example, operating instruction or something like that. And a topic type could be a task, for example. So what you're seeing here is just the classes without the members of these classes. So there's more hidden behind that, but I left that out because it would be too big and too confusing. If you're interested in that, you can come to the iiRDS Cafe tomorrow and I'll show you in detail. We've got the document type for the documents, the topic type for topics and fragments, and the information subjects. An example of an information subject would be safety, for example. So that's the first class metadata that was in 0.9. The next one is functional metadata. And functional metadata is metadata that you can use to implement certain functionality in the iiRDS consumer, the content delivery portal, the one that is actually doing something with the package. We've got event qualification, supply, and planning time here, and there's more underneath that, of course. That's left out here intentionally. So what can you do with it? For example, you could assign a qualification to a topic, to a task, and model that particular task is for people that are service technicians and have a certain qualification. You could use the supplies to generate supply lists and so on.
A list of tools, for instance, that specific tasks need or require tools. An application could create a tool list before the service technician actually goes out into the plant. I mean, this can be several kilometers large. They can pick their list of tools to take with them because they need to do the service tasks. So that is behind the supplies, for instance.
Mm-hmm. And the third class of metadata that was in 0.9 is the product metadata. That's everything that's related to products, like the product variant, components that might be relevant for that particular information unit, the phase of the product life cycle, for example, and product features. There's a lot, again, a lot underneath. One phase of product life cycle could be disposal or maintenance, for example. So this is the metadata vocabulary that was in 0.9, And it also still is in 1.0. But as you will see, we added something. So these are the metadata vocabulary. That's not just labels that you attach to an information unit. And that's one of the principles of the semantic web. There's a qualified relation between the information unit and the value. That's a property. So in the semantic web, everything is a statement about resources. It's a so-called triple: subject, predicate, object. And you will see that here as an example. There's a topic that has a relation, relates to the phase of the product lifecycle, disposal. That's not very exciting here. That's very simple, right? It gets exciting as soon as the object of the triple of this triple becomes the subject of another triple. So that what you get then is a long line of relationships, and you can query these relations, and that's what you probably saw in the use cases earlier. So if you have a knowledge web with these triples, you can query information about the topic that's not directly attached to the topic, that's not directly assigned to the topic.
For instance, you could have another topic that refers to disposal, and those two topics, that would be, can I have this?
Sure.
This would be on this end, the topic, and these two topics are not related by any hyperlink, but they can be queried and found as related topic because they both relate to disposal. So that is the charm of the semantic web, that you can go along those nodes and find related information.
Yeah, you can also integrate data coming from other sources and so on. These are, again, advanced scenarios, I'd say. Yeah, that's the part of iiRDS that's basically the core, and that is still there.
What we did after the tcworld conference in 2017 was to start a request for comments. And that was a phase between November and December 2017. And we got a lot of comments, fortunately, from different people within the working group and outside the working group who started to work with iiRDS. And this is just an extract from what we got. For instance, from Voigt, there came a comment that they were missing some diagram types, which we added to the information subjects. That was easy. The structure was already there. We just extended the instances. Not so easy was feedback like this, which came from several sides that people wanted to have a versioning of information units. And we had left out that of the release candidate. We were aware that this was missing, but there was another initiative going on at the same time, which I will switch to here. I don't know if that is large enough. I can go in here. There were other standardization initiatives going on, the most important one being the German Association of Engineers, VDI, and they had a working group dealing with a standard called 2770. I don't know what is the correct 2770, I don't know. That is the number, and it had a kind of overlapping goals with iiRDS, because they were also talking about digital user information that was to be supplied by manufacturers delivering, for instance, information to the process industry like BASF, and they have big plants, big chemical plants, where they have all the machines and components, and they wanted to have a common taxonomy for categorizing such information. So there was a big overlap with iiRDS, and we wanted to align in order to prevent that we go into different directions or that people have to adhere to two standards instead of just one. So what the VDI did is that they based their standard on international IEC standards. You see both of them here. And one of them had administrative information in there, like the identity of a information unit or information about the life cycle. And the other one had information about the classification of documents. And so we analyzed those standards and got some new classes for iiRDS. You will learn more about this in a second.
Yeah. can I add something?
Yeah.
What's probably interesting here is that they started looking at other standards, while the TCOM started looking at the actual use cases that we have in our community. And we came to
very similar concepts.
conclusions,
Yeah.
Concepts, yeah.
Yeah, but it was good. One came from the bottom,
Yeah.
the other came from.
But still, the exchange with this other working group is certainly beneficial for both standards. And I'm not sure if I'm going to mention that later. I'll just do it right now. The idea is to have to map iiRDS metadata to a VDI 2770 package. So that if you fill an iiRDS package, that you will always be able to use that information and generate a VDI compliant package as well. So okay, let's have a look at the metadata. And the metadata before, that was probably
easier. Now it's
easier.
getting
Now it's now it's getting more abstract, and it's about admin metadata that was added, and we knew that it was missing, so we had to add it at one point. And what we added was another. So we had the three classes, right, that I mentioned earlier: information type, functional metadata, and product metadata. And now we added another parent class for metadata, administrative metadata. And there's three concepts behind it that we thought are really relevant. And that's the party in the middle, the information unit lifecycle status, and then the identity. I will tell you a bit about that in detail. Okay, the party. You can use the party to model who's, for example, involved in creating content. You can also use the party to model the one who's the supplier of a component, if you want to. So the party has information about the names and the address of the body or the person. And we are reusing vcard here, which is another established standard. And the party is referencing values in the class party role. And one is, for example, author, one party role. Or supplier is another one. We don't have extra slides for that. I'd like to mention that one of the things that we did between the release of the release candidate and the release of the 1.0 version was also an overhaul of the documentation of the specification. And the diagram that you can see here is very detailed, you know that, but that's also in the specification, and it's defining the properties that something needs to have, or how many it has, and things like that. And I just picked that to illustrate that the party here over there is referenced not only by the information unit, but also by the product variant and by the component, and that rather obscure identity domain. We'll hear a bit about that later. So that's in the specification.
So if you have a supplier and your component is something that an external supplier delivers to you, you can store the information about the supplier.
If you want to. You can store that in the package, right? You could do that in an external ontology as well. But you can also add it to the package, which might be interesting if you want to have everything self-contained in one place. Okay, that was the party. Information in the lifecycle status. That's also easy for technical writers. We saw product lifecycle phase earlier. And this is something different, of course. This is about the lifecycle, so to speak, of the information unit. You can use that to model if an information unit was reviewed, if it's accepted, if it's released, things like that. So the information unit lifecycle status is, again, just like the party, referencing instances in the class value of the information unit lifecycle status, and there's things in there just like the ones that I just mentioned: approved, reviewed, in review, things like that. I think we've got another diagram over here. Yeah, that's a bit...
Just because they are so nice?
Yeah, it's not as complicated. What's interesting here is that you can add additional information to the content lifecycle status value. Content lifecycle status, like the start and the end of that particular content lifecycle phase, so to speak. So if something might be accepted, but is to be released in the future, and at one point it's not valid anymore. you can model that.
Yeah, content that expires
Yeah.
at a certain point in time.
You can add comments and purposes here as well. And that is also, there's an equivalent to that in the standards that we mentioned earlier. Okay, third one is the identity. And in RDF, every resource that we use to model something, to make a statement about something, has an identifier. But one identifier for an information unit might not be enough. So you might have, for example, an information unit, a topic, that has an identifier in your CCMS, that might get another one or have another one in your content delivery portal. Or the same with a component. The component might have an identifier in the database of the supplier, or it might have one in the database of the one who bought that component and is then using it. And you can model that with the identity. And the identity has a literal as a value, so it could be whatever, an ID. And it also has an identity domain, and that domain says, use this value in this particular context, like the identity domain could be my CCMS. Of course, the information unit can have multiple identities then. So here's another one of these fancy diagrams. Thanks, Martin, for generating them. Is he still here?
No, he left.
Okay. The information unit has an identity. A rendition may have an identity, and product variant, components, and so on. So that was added. And there's one more thing that's maybe even a bit more abstract than the identity. That's the information object. Some CCMSs might have that. It's basically a version-independent representation of a set of information units. So I was trying to a yearbook, for example, of a school. That yearbook would be the information object, and the yearbook of 2018 would be one information unit. The yearbook of that school of 2019 would be another one. And the information object is like a bracket, umbrella, yeah. That is referenced by all these information units. So what it is? Yes. So you can find all information units that come from the same source by looking for the information object in the relation.
So two topic variants, for instance, or two versions of a topic would have the same information object on top.
You don't have to use that, but if you want to, then it's there.
You don't have to do any of that.
Oh, come on! Yeah, in theory, you could.
Technically, not much is mandatory.
It's not. Yeah, you're right. So it's not a lot mandatory. You could, in theory, have an almost empty metadata.
You could almost have empty metadata, but that is also the nice thing about it, because you can choose. That is like a big pool. You can choose the metadata that you want to deliver with your content, and according to your use cases, you are not forced to fill the complete model. That is not necessary.
Yeah, I was at went to a tutorial this morning, and there was also someone asking. There's quite a lot of metadata, and some might be intimidated by that. You don't have to use all that. You have to think about the use cases that you want to implement, then you pick the ones that you want to have. Because what iiRDS does is providing you a toolset. It's supposed to help you, not make things more complicated, by standardizing things. So you don't have to think about everything that's possible. Just have a look at that what's already there. And a lot of people think that this is, at least for a lot of use cases in the world of technical writing, this is sufficient. So I'm pretty sure there's room for improvement, but it's certainly a starting point if you're thinking about adding metadata, using metadata. Okay, do you have the thingy?
I think you wanted to do that.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So these things were added to what we saw earlier, the administrative metadata. there were also some simplifications in the hierarchy of properties and things like that that we implemented.
A lot of documentation was
A lot of
written,
documentation
actually,
was
always
written.
at the end, you know how we are.
And that was released in April, yeah. Thanks. And it is available on that website, iiRDS.org. It's published under a Creative Commons license, so you can download it and you can use it. The only thing you have to do is you have to register. Yeah. That's on the website.
Okay, so after we released iiRDS in April, or even before that, the consortium, the iiRDS consortium, was founded. And this is a list of the current members. So iiRDS started, it's an awful name, started as a working group within TCOM, and now we have a private consortium. Just like DITA, for instance, is a private consortium, the same applies to iiRDS. The members pay a fee to be a member. And as a benefit from the membership, they can shape the standard and contribute to the standard, of course, implement it in their systems or projects. So there's a difference. There are different memberships. You have the founding members, which were in from the start in January 2018, and then we have associate members which came later, and also sponsoring members. But you find all that information on the website. If your company is interested, we would be very happy to have you on board. The more people we have in the consortium and in the working groups, the better the standard gets. Okay, so now we are in June 2018. As I said, we released version 1.0 in April, and then the consortium was there and was organized, and then the steering committee was elected, and we met in June for the very first time and tried to organize ourselves. What we did is that we took all the input from the people who were engaging in iiRDS and defined work packages that we wanted to tackle. And from these work packages we derived working groups that would continue the work that the original working group had been doing. And my colleague will tell you more about the working groups in a second. And we also saw the need for some task forces, like the VDI standard that we already mentioned. And they took on more immediate tasks that had to be solved quickly. And the third thing that was established this year is an iiRDS office. And Judith is here somewhere, there. She's the office. So she organizes all the marketing activities. She is the one answering emails, and she also takes a close look at the budget and sees that we don't spend too much money. This has all been set up in the months between April and now, and it has been a lot of work, honestly. But I think it's a very good organization now that we have, and we can continue working on that basis, and that was the intention. Okay, so that's yours, I think.
Okay, yeah, there's not a lot to say here, because I will tell you a bit more about the working groups when we talk about the roadmap, about what's ahead. Basically, the working groups, they met the first time in September. I mean, there were working groups before, but these were TCOM working groups, and these working groups are now working groups of the consortium. Some of the members of these working groups were also, of course, in the TCOM working group, so there's a certain continuity. And there were first meetings, basically, where we discussed how to go on, how to work on the standard, and that's going to be somewhere over there in a half a minute or so. So that's where we are now. I think you were going to tell us a bit about this one.
Yeah, that's where we are
right?
now. We have version 1.0 is out, or has been out for quite some time now. And yesterday we had the first annual meeting of the consortium and elected a new steering committee and talked about the roadmap and the budget for next year. And we saw some nice implementation of iiRDS projects. And if you take a look on the agenda on the program of this conference, you will see that iiRDS has already found its way into practice, at least in some projects with Carl Zeiss, for instance, with Voigt, and you can see implementations at the Ampelis booth, for instance. Ampelis and Parson, for instance, are working on plugins for DITA, which will be also make available open source, so you can generate iiRDS from DITA content if you want.
Yeah.
So people are working on that and with that.
The cafe, I mentioned
the cafe.
I mentioned that earlier.
The cafe is where?
It's the blue box.
Oh, the blue one, okay. Yeah.
That's tomorrow. And I was talking to someone earlier and he said, oh, I didn't really understand it. What is it about? The idea is there's a number of these high tables, and we're going to be there with our laptops, and you can come and we can discuss aspects of the standard. There's going to be like 10 or 11 tables, I think. And there's going to be use cases, and we can have a look at packages. We will see how you can easily generate a package, things like that. So if you're interested in that, I'd be happy to see you there tomorrow.
Yeah, and on our table you will find chocolate from Hamburg.
Oh, come on.
No coffee. No, you have to bring. I think you have to bring the coffee from outside. Yeah. But that was an organizational issue, not ours. We took care of the chocolate. Okay, so in 2019, the working groups will continue their activities, and Mark, you wanted to talk about that?
Okay, we saw these 3 working groups earlier. Working group tools, validation content, the working group development, and the working group standards. Yeah, the most important one is, of course, the one that I'm a member of. That is the working group development. No, but it's the one where I can tell you a bit more about what's going on in the other ones. So we are trying to make the model and the specification as stable as possible. We're trying to keep it as stable as possible, and for that we have to fix some bugs. There's issues that we reported, and we got quite a lot of feedback even after the release of 1.0. And the first thing we did was we looked at all these issues and tried to classify them. Is that actually a bug? Or is that a request for an improvement? Is it a misunderstanding? What is it? So the priority, as we said before, and also the one that the steering committee basically decided, is to fix the bugs first. And that's what we're going to do. And as you can see down here, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jira. That's just an overview over the issues. We labeled them, so there's bugs, model, package, spec, and there's improvements. The improvements have to wait, unfortunately. And what's maybe interesting is also this one down here, collector, and then this weird ID. You saw that screenshot of the website earlier with these, where you can download. I can probably jump. Oh, you're going to show it on the browser?
I'm trying. Okay.
And you have to register and log in. And when you are on that page where you can download everything, you can also, there's also a button, you have to scroll down a bit, there's a button, and if you click that, you can provide feedback. And whatever you write in there is going to end up in Jira, and we will see that then. So if you find something, the alternative is to mail it to Judith.
Yeah, either mail it to Judith or make a comment on the, I think I have to log in first.
Yeah, we would have to log in first, yeah. Otherwise we can't see it.
And then there's a form that you can fill in, and then that automatically ends up in Jira. So there's no one looking at emails if possible, but it ends up in Jira directly.
Yeah, we're trying to make it as easy as possible to provide feedback for you and for us to then fix it and work on it. Okay, so there's bugs, there's hopefully fixes. What's next? We are aiming to release...
Sorry, you have to click again.
What did you do? We're hopefully going to release a patch version, 1.01, probably in April next year. Working group tools, validation and content. A lot of people had problems in the past, I'm not sure if that's still the case, to understand what a package could look like. So that's one of the priorities here, is to provide a sample content, a sample package, make that available so that you can download it, see how that looks like, and then play around with that. There's also on the roadmap a reference implementation, Open Toolkit, which is also going to be made available to, I think, the TCOM members. And they can use it to then generate a package.
Yeah, the idea is also to provide you with a toolkit. If you have a CMS, you can ask your CMS provider. If you don't have a CMS and you have legacy content, old existing content, our intention is to provide you with a tool to generate iiRDS packages for that. So maybe if you're supplying documentation to BASF or anybody of the big players in the market who wants to have categorized and classified content, you can use that tool. That is the intention.
And the third item on the list is validation. So the working group is planning to provide a framework that allows you to validate your package to see if it's actually compliant with the standard. Okay, the third working group is working group standards. This one is going to coordinate our efforts with other bodies and other standards. There's the VDI, the Association of German Engineers, Platform Industrie 4.0, Platform Industry 4.0, E-Class, and also the Digital TC. There's already things going on, so this is already work in progress. There's also this item here. iiRDS is aiming to work on an international standard, which is, what was it called, publicly?
It's a publicly available draft, a PAS. That's what you need to hand in with the IEC to make it an international standard in the end. So that's it. TCOM has very good experience with that, and we are relying on that and using that to try to make iiRDS an international standard, an ISO standard. This is what people ask about. That's what they need for the work to be reliable.
Yeah, and the last item here is there's another ISO project, Vocabulary of Technical Communication, and we are also going to align our work and try to see what they are doing and then bring that all together. Yeah, that's on the roadmap. There's more, of course, and it's actually quite a long list of working packages, and these are just the ones that we thought are most important for you. So that's going to happen then over here during the next months and next year. So yeah, are there any questions?
From my experience and looking at what you presented, the iiRDS package looks similar in a way with the EPUB standard, which packages similar resources. So, and I haven't seen that as the related standards that you talk about, because it's a similar concept, the zip concept, based on restricted HTML5 or XHTML. And so on.
I'm not that familiar with EPUB, I have to admit that. So
then maybe you can make a note.
We should put it on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. We need a mic over there.
I would bring it to you, but I don't know. Just
We are not allowed to
strangle
move.
myself with a cable here.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the QR code. Just take the URL if it doesn't work.
Question to check my understanding. When you said that metadata are an option but don't necessarily, or various sorts of metadata can but don't have to be added. Can I understand an example to be, for instance, if you have a list of all of the parts of a car, and if the metadata supplier are added, then you could query the model of the car to say what parts are from Bosch and what are from Continental, and if you don't have the metadata, then you can't place that query.
Yeah.
Is that a good example?
That is a good example, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Technically, that's what I said. Technically, you don't have to provide much, but it, of course, should be in your interest to deliver the metadata with the content that satisfy the scenarios of your users. So what are your users querying? What are they asking? And you should provide that metadata if possible.
So for certain use cases, you would need that, of course, and then you would have to the generator of the package and the consumer would have to come to an agreement what they are expecting, right?
Yeah, but that's on a whole different page.
Yeah.
That is an application
Project
design
specific.
and project specific. Yeah.
Okay, there's one over here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's always the longest distance between 2 points. That's
Yeah, one question. I think a lot of us here are working with CCMS, so that means this metadata needs to come from somewhere, right? So, and it's sometimes hard to get this metadata out of the CMS and to get it into an iiRDS package, I guess, in the end. So what is the plan for that? So I know there's no one size fits all. That's not working for CCMS are different. So, but are there some good practice things how to approach that?
This is thankfully out of scope of the standard, how to implement it. But you have to. Yeah, sure.
Well, the answer is simply ask your content management system provider, because they are all heavily involved in this consortium right now. And if you push them to provide their software with iiRDS, because that is what they have promised to us, then they will start implementing.
Yeah, and they're the first who can export packages like that. And there's also other ways to generate packages, just like with the Ditto Open Toolkit plugin, but they are probably not that interesting if you're using particular CCMS, right?
Yeah, and the other point is if you're starting with the CCMS now, you can, of course, I mean, there are different ways of establishing a metadata concept in your CCMS. So you could also take a look at iiRDS and how it's structured and then transfer some of these concepts and approaches to your metadata concept. And then you can map it. It's actually a mapping. They map the CCMS metadata to iiRDS metadata, and then they have a transformation in or outside the CCMS that generates the iiRDS package.
But when it comes to exporting, so the system has to help.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
system
sure.
has to help in some way. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so have fun with the rest of the conference and thank you for your attention.